Hello and welcome to this latest episode of the Shots Pod, which is a podcast all about Aldershot Town FC. I'm Liam Flint, and as always, I have my dad Howard Flint with me. Dad, you and me today. How you doing?
Doing all right. Yeah. Looking forward to our comparisons.
Yeah. For those who don't know what that refers to, on today's episode, we're going to be laying out our ultimate Shots 11 from the year 2000 onwards. And when we do get to this segment, we will clarify exactly what we're doing, the criteria, because this always upsets people, always upsets fans. And so we're going to make it very clear why we're picking what we're picking, and hopefully it'll be a little bit of fun. But Dad, we're also going to chat a little bit about Tyler Frost's new contract. Obviously, that's big news. Us as fans, we've been waiting on that for quite a while now, so that's a great breakthrough. But let's start with recent affairs with Solihull. So we're now reflecting back on the weekend game at home against Solihull. They're a position above us. We thought with a win, that would be obviously great for cementing playoffs. We're on a good run at home. We both kind of watched the highlights. We weren't there in person. What did you make of Tommy's post-match, what you've seen and heard with that 1-1 draw?
Well, firstly, I think Shots will be happy with the draw in the end, in the way that the game played out. So the narrative of the game was a goal behind with a couple of minutes to play in terms of normal time. So I think when everything's settled down, I think, as Tommy indicated, a point is a point. We haven't lost ground on Solihull. Other teams have made ground. So I think they'd be happy in terms of the result with the narrative of goal down with 2 minutes to go. But in terms of the game, certainly Cian Harris in his post-match interview suggested that because of dominance, that was the word he used, they dominated certainly the first half and a good part of the second half, looking for the equaliser. They should have won. But all in all, I think what Tommy says is pretty realistic, is we forget it and move on, or we take the point, forget it and move on.
Yeah, it did feel like Tommy from his interview very clearly thought we should have won and we had enough chances to win. It was a very open, free-flowing game. They hit the post twice. They did look a threat. We also looked a threat but couldn't really find the clinical edge we've had in recent games. But I suppose takeaway from that is you don't want to lose to those teams around you. And the fact that, yeah, we've got a point when it looks like we wouldn't at all keeps them within reach. And as you say, teams have started bunching up behind, but we stay in fifth. So, yeah, probably feels like points gained in the scenario of the match. But yeah, we protect that unbeaten record, which is good at home.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you think of the two camps on the way home, I think the Shots players would be saying, we could have won it, but we salvaged a point, or we kept the point we had at the beginning. I think going home, Solihull will be saying we were 2 minutes from winning. I know there are 8 extra minutes, but that sort of thing. We could have had 3 against one of our prime opponents. So I think they'll, if you like ups and downs, I think Shots will be saying, okay, we've done well, and Solihull will be disappointed. I don't think Shots will be disappointed. I think they'll be glad to get a point, really.
And it's so funny how often former players come back and score. And obviously for Tavon Campbell to score, I think he's now got 5 in his last 5. Lots of people saw that coming, but it's just the amount of times when we've been there at the EBB and it happens, it just, you can't write it, can you? It's frustrating.
There are so many players in the National League who are ex-Aldershot players that it's bound to happen, isn't it? When you look across the teams, there are so many players. Callum Reynolds did it to us at Aldershot, getting an equaliser for Bromley, and so on and so on. There are just so many ex-Shots players because they're all at this level. It's sort of settling at this level means that they're playing for, Josh Rees, has been scoring for fun, hasn't he, for Dagenham? And we've got to play Dagenham at the end of the season, last game. What are the chances of him scoring against us? Or if it's not him, Ini Effiong. So you have to swallow hard on those, Liam. You have to say, it's written.
Yeah, it just always seems to happen. It's just an uncanny thing that all football fans have to go through. So that's winless in 2. Are we calling it slight blip, or would you have taken this draw at home in response to the defeat at York?
I go back to the thing we said with 10 games to go. In fact, before then, and said 2 points per game is good form. 2 points per game from the outset of 10 games to go means you get in the playoffs. So that's 1 point from four. So I think shots now really would be saying need to win at Maidenhead, and if they can win at Maidenhead and then beat Dorking, you've got 7 from 12, which is 2 points per game. In fact, more than a draw at Maidenhead and a win at Dorking, home to Dorking, would give you 5 points and be just below the 2 points. So I think they can either get 7 or 5, and they'd be happy probably with either. 7 obviously is a good return from those 4 games.
Yeah, it's been bizarre, I think. Just when you think we've scored so many goals all season, we just expect that we'll score at least 2 a game. But the last couple of games now, obviously nothing from Stokes, nothing from Tullage. Um, that's always going to happen, isn't it? They can't just keep scoring. They're not robots. But we've been
Mm,
spoilt a little bit in that we've not really had to do a 0-1 or get a penalty from our centre back to get a 1-1. This is kind of the first time where you might say, yeah, they've gone 3 games without a goal. And so
yeah,
we just need that dry spell to end, don't we? But nothing
yeah.
major to worry about.
No, and I think teams will be spending a lot of opponents will be spending a lot of time saying, "How do we stop them?" Andy Wing, in his pre-match interview for Solihull, the Solihull manager, said again, like all the other managers said recently, that they've got a lot of firepower. So I think other oppositions will be spending quite a lot of their prep week saying, "How do we nullify Aldershot?" rather than how do we beat them? Um, I'm sure they would want to beat them, but do you know what I mean? Their focus, I think, would be on closing down the midfield, stopping chances, occupying the wing backs from which a lot of chances come, and also are going to have to adjust to that. And the midfield, if you take Josh Stokes as a front player, the front three, the midfield haven't contributed a great number of other goals, have they, from Aldershot? So if the front three don't score, you're then looking around a bit and saying, okay, Harris has scored 7 penalties. Who else? Frosty scored some goals, which is great. But um, yeah, I think shots are having to respond to the fact that they're meeting opponents who are really working hard to limit the chances. Having said that, Solihull offered up plenty of chances, and we weren't clinical. So yeah, as Tommy would say, on to the next one. I think.
Yep, on to Maidenhead we go. So in amongst that, Dad, obviously just before the game, the news broke that Tyler Frost has signed a new deal, so he's now going to be with the Shots technically until 2026. And obviously, when we spoke to him a few weeks ago at the EBB, it was all still up in the air. And I think people have just been desperate for him to put pen to paper. We know he
Mm.
loves the club. The way he spoke with us is pretty clear that his ideal scenario is to take the Shots with him rather than go somewhere else. So, yeah, how pleased were you that it's actually got over the line? Were you surprised that it's come at this point?
Not really. I think when he spoke to us, Liam, you remember he quite understandably said, "I don't really want to talk about contracts," because he was in contract conversations. Clearly, as we know, others have been as well. So I think news will filter out. I'm sure. Well, I'm positive Tommy and Terry Brown and the other members of the team are talking to lots of players because he'll want to keep the core together. I think it's a brilliant. I think it's a brilliant move for the Shots. I think he said himself in his interview with Sam that he's growing up as a player, and I think we've all seen that. Really, on the pitch, he's becoming more vocal. I think he said. But when we spoke to him, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about what he might do after the game, or does he want to be a coach or a manager? And he said, "Yeah, I would actually." And I think he's showing signs of that maturity, thinking about the game beyond himself, being more vocal in the changing room, being more vocal on the pitch, and being consistent as a performer. I think he could be a really good coach, actually. So great news. I think he's a star. I think he's a real star for that this year for us.
Yeah, I agree. I think he
What about?
spoke so well, and you
Yeah.
instantly just get a flavour that he loves the game. He's taking it seriously. He's thinking about his career. He seems like he's got his head screwed on. And he, like I said, he wants to take shots with him, which isn't always the case at this level. A lot of players just want to get that move up, and it's thanks very much, but see you later. So I find it really refreshing that actually he's got an affinity with the club and with
Yeah,
the fans to the point where he'd rather take us up than maybe get a move sideways or slightly up. So I always think we look for commitment, don't we, and loyalty and things
yeah,
like that. And it
yeah,
feels like he's got that in spades.
yeah. You may remember a few podcasts ago we spoke about what an older shot DNA is, and for me, Frosty is an older shot player. Just like Tommy is a really good fit for the manager of Aldershot, I think. Well, we think, don't we, personally? I think Frosty is the sort of player that the Aldershot fans love. Fully wholehearted, committed, gives everything, honest, prepared to take a responsibility and accountability. Is clearly cross with the team when the team isn't performing. He's a winner. Really, he wants to win. And I think we've not had enough of those in the last 5 years under Danny Searle and Mark Molesley, I'm afraid.
Yeah. So the message is thanks for signing, Tyler, if you're listening. Appreciate it. That's obviously the good word we put in, Dad, at the EBB, then made things go a bit smoother.
I think we smoothed the way. I mean, he still needs to work on naming the Premiership football grounds, though, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I think he'd only name 11, couldn't he? Poor old
Yeah.
Tyler.
Yeah, I think he'll be happy to leave that and to move on with his coaching badges instead.
Yeah.
Again.
Let's keep reminding him, though, when we see him, that he could only name 11.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll love that failure reminder. So yeah, really positive news, Dad, both on the unbeaten front, 5th in the league, Tyler signing a new contract. It's been a good week. And we thought, before we line up some more player interviews, that we'd kind of treat this next few moments to put across our opinion and our thoughts on our ultimate 11s. So just explain the context for this. As I said at the start, always controversial, always upsets people. People never agree with you from different generations. So what we've done is Dad and I have come up with our ultimate shots 11s from the year 2000 onwards. Now, obviously, I know we reformed in 92, but that's when I was born. So I thought it was a little bit unfair for us to start from there, seeing as I had no context for who the players were. So giving us a bit of a head start there. Any player from 2000 onwards that fit into our category of ultimate 11. So this is not necessarily, Dad, is it the best players or the top goal scorers? These are players that fit into certain categories. Do you want to just explain the 3 categories that we've worked on?
Yeah, so the thinking about category, how do you choose that out of hundreds of players? For me, and I think we're both in the same boat here, Liam. A player who was exciting that you wanted to go and see. So a player that you think I'd love to see, very much as we are at the moment with Laurent Tolage and Josh Stokes. You go expectant and positive, and they do it week after week or time after time. So exciting, committed. So what we've been saying about Tyler, just somebody who whatever their position, is 100% a shot because they love the club. And then the third thing is, yes, talent, but not in the sense of the best left back or centre forward or whatever, but just somebody who made the best of his talent, and probably improved as well over the time that we saw them. So a lot of these players I think that we're going to mention were at shots at least 3 years or so, or certainly a good couple of seasons, and we saw them grow into being a legend. I've sort of unofficially thought of mine as legends in the club. People who, if we say their names, people who are watching this will say, yeah, he was a true shot. That's what we're hoping.
Okay, so yeah, we've gone for excitement, commitment, and talent as our 3 parameters. So yeah, we'd love to hear off the back of this episode your 11s, in the comments, or get in touch with us on social media to see and let us know what tweaks you would make, because of course it is very subjective. But thinking about 2000 onwards, Dad will start in goal, because that's the obvious. Start with the goalkeeper. When you first started taking me to shots games, this was the guy who was in goal at the time. And I just think goes without saying, shots legend, best keeper we've had. And this is where you disagree with me, unbelievably, perhaps. I hope you don't. But I've gone for the obvious Nicky Bull in goal, who's obviously just, a legend from 2002 to 2009, around 260 appearances. I mean, we've got stats, but you may occasionally get them wrong. So I want to say these are general stats. Don't come back at us saying we're out by one appearance. So around 260 over a 7-year period. Absolute legend, Dad. Do you agree with
Yeah.
that, or have you got another selection?
No, Nicky was my number one straight away. I didn't really have to think about it very much. I mean, Nicky was just a fantastic servant of the club, and I always remember an interview. In fact, I sent this interview to Tommy when he joined the club of Nicky Bull at Exeter when we gained promotion back to the EFL, and we got a draw and we got the point we needed. And Nicky Bull was interviewed by Satanta rather, which was covering the game. And Nicky gave about a 2-minute interview about the passion he had for shots, because this is the club that died in '92. This is the club that these supporters, Graham Brookland and others, Terry Owens, revived. And those of us that go and watch now only go and watch because of people like that. And Nicky was absolutely brilliant. He was, and I see why he's a manager now. You know, can see why, because he was fantastic. So Nicky is an absolute legend. So he's a shoe-in for number one.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good start. We've agreed. Maybe this will be the one and only time we're going to agree. But I think Nicky Bull even scored a goal as well. So we need to put him in there firmly as a Shots Ultimate 11 player. So formation-wise, Dad, we both got a back four, so we can just crack on with that as is. Do you want to give us your right back?
Yeah, my right back. I think there were some really good options there, but I've gone for Shea Alexander. He was at the Shots 2015 to 2018. He's gone on, hasn't he, to professional, as a professional to Gillingham and Barnet and then Gillingham. I did think of Ben Hurd. Ben Hurd was incredibly committed. He scored big on the committed, but I think in terms of Shea Alexander arrival and nurture under Gary Waddock, and then the talent, I think he had more skill than Ben. So he's my number two.
Okay. Pleased to say that I've matched you there, Dad, again. I didn't think you were going to do that. I thought you'd go way back. I thought Ben Hurd would be yours.
No.
But yeah, I've also gone for Shea Alexander. And again, for me, it was the talent. I just think he was such a solid, talented right back. And obviously it helps to then see their career path. Obviously, most recently he's been at Gillingham, hasn't he? So playing in the Football League, still a young player now. But I always remember, and this was obviously when I was a bit older going to see the Shots, he was always just quality. I always thought this guy's going to just go straight up to the next league. So yeah, wise minds think alike. I'm shocked that you've gone for Alexander. I was thinking of Ben Hurd for a while because of, I think I've got him here. I think he's on my bench with 150 caps. So 150 appearances is pretty good. But yeah, Che Alexander for me out in front.
Good. 2 out of 2.
2 out of 2. So we've got Nicky Bull and we've got Alexander at right back. Okay, centre backs. I found this quite tricky to get a pairing. But my first centre back is going to be Anthony Charles. And the reason I've gone for Anthony Charles, again, I remember seeing him and he was so good in the air, very cool under pressure, dominated defences. He was part of the kind of winning championship seasons for us. And I think, again, seeing his career path, he then went on and up. And he made over 200 appearances for the Shots. So I remember him very clearly. And I think he was a great centre-back, pretty versatile. So, yeah, he's kind of my left-sided centre-back.
Okay, I'll match you with my left-sided centre-back, and I've gone for Chris Barker. Unfortunately, Chris is no longer with us. He died a few years ago. But he was left-sided again. Played for Cardiff and saw them promoted into the Championship. A really, really silky defender, very, very committed. For Shots, he was here at a very difficult time. And he took over as interim manager for a while when we were lounging in the bottom of the league. And he was so gracious and he was so so committed to the club. Even though he'd had a professional career, also played for Southend and several other clubs. Made about 90 appearances for Shots, so not hundreds, but very, very gifted. So I think for me, not so exciting, but so dependable and committed. And he was a championship player. Played from Wales. Great player. And sadly, he's no longer with us. And I think he just had a quality that I'd put him in there. Anthony Charles, I agree, really committed, commanding in the air. But my other centre back is commanding in the air and makes up for them. So I think Chris Barker on the left and my other choice on the right makes a strong pair.
Okay. So in terms of that Barker Charles debate, because you remember both of them, whereas I don't really recall Barker that much. You need to make the final call on that one.
Yeah. I mean, I know what you mean about Anthony Charles, and he was also very committed to the Shots. Actually had 2 spells with us. And I remember you came to the game, I think, where he made his debut, and he literally won everything in the air. Literally. Chris Barker was at the end of his career. Obviously, he was sort of on the way back down, and he played for some non-league clubs afterwards. That's a really difficult call, you know. I'd probably go for Barker just because he was such a pro and he played in the championship.
Okay, yeah, give you that because Anthony Charles did not. So we'll go with that one.
Unfortunately,
Okay,
not quite. No.
okay. So your centre back pairing, who's your other one then? That's you said they're good in the air.
Yeah, so my other is I think a real legend. It's Ray Warburton. 2003, joined the Shots and played for a couple of years, about 80 appearances for the Shots. And he was there at the club when we won the Isthmian Premier League. So if you imagine, 92 we went down 6 divisions, and the Isthmian Premier was the one just below, moving towards the conference, as it was then. So that championship, he was awesome. He was big, strong defender, very, very good in the air, very uncompromising, but not dirty. Just a really dependable defender. Played for Northampton Town for a lot of years, and that was in EFL 2 and 1 as well. So yeah, Ray Warburton's my right-sided centre back.
Okay, you might get this one then because I've picked mine purely on talent, and they're actually a player this season. So I've put Ollie Harfield in just because I think I can predict his path. Obviously, he's just played for England C. He's been one of our best players this year, and I think he's he's starting to get to the peak of what he's going to do. So I put him in as like a left wing. Well, not left wing, you know what I mean? Like an odd decision because he's not had years at the club. But I think we'll look back and he'll be one of our best defenders. So, yeah, that's who I've gone alongside my Anthony Charles, who you've kicked out for Barker. And we're probably about to kick Harfield out as well for Warburton.
Okay. Well, my fourth defender, so I'm playing a back four, both of us, is Ollie Harfield, and I'm playing him as an orthodox left back. So sorry to Tommy, but we're not playing wing backs here because actually nobody played wing backs very much back in 2000, to be honest. So no, Ollie makes it for me. I thought long and hard about Jason Chewins. A lot of fans will know Jason, absolute stalwart for the club, brilliant commitment, never say die sort of guy. But I just feel Ollie, and maybe it's because he's present at the moment and we're seeing him every week, but I think he's must be destined for League Two or even League One, mustn't he?
Yeah, definitely. That's what I think anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes life a little bit easier for me then, probably, because I would like to have Ollie Harfield in. But my left back, again, based on being solid, dependable, long-time servant to the club, was Anthony Straker.
Yes.
Who, again, I remember being a teenager coming to watch, and he was always there. So over 200 appearances again, spell between 2007 and 12, so that's 5 years, and then he came back for another short stint as well, 16-17 season, so towards the end of his
Mm,
career. And again, I just remember him really pacey, up and down the line, solid defender, and he was just, you don't really get players spending 6 years at one club anymore.
no.
So he was who I had in, but if we're accommodating Ollie by putting him there, then I think we can agree on Ollie Harfield at left back.
Okay. I mean, Strakes was one of my sort of subs, or my pool. That's not true. It's not quite true. He was one of my pool of players
Okay.
who I had to sort of discard at one point. Anthony Straker was great in his first spell, and was a real servant, and then went on to better things, didn't he? He actually went up to Wycombe Wanderers and followed Gary Waddock. So I don't disagree with he's there. He's definitely there for the shout. But if we think Ollie is definitely our number one, both of us agree on him, then yeah, probably Strakes has to stay on the bench.
Okay, that's fine. So, okay, we've got our backline sorted, we've got our keeper sorted. So this is where we diverge slightly. So you've gone 4-3-3, Dad, haven't you?
Yeah. Yep, I've gone 4-3-3, and so my right winger / midfield is Aaron McLean.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think again a player that I showed up to watch because of the sort of player he was. So lightning quick, scored a few goals. I think he scored 25, 26 goals for shots in 100 appearances or so. So scored a reasonable rate. But more than anything, he was direct and dynamic. And some people watching this will remember Bobby Barnes. That's going way back before you, Liam. And Bobby Barnes was a similar player, tricky. In fact, Bobby had more skill, but tricky, direct, fast, and could score. And now he's got a TV career, so we've even put him on the TV for everybody.
That's a good shout, actually. Yeah, he came into my thinking, but I didn't put him in my team
Okay.
because I've got similar profile players that I have gone for. So, bearing in mind, I've got a traditional 4-4-2, so I've actually got wide players who can actually play wide, whereas you're trying to
Yeah.
cram yours into a three. I Was he going to play on the right side for you, or was it more left centre?
Yeah. Yeah. Aaron McLean was going to play right mid for me. Well, right, right side of the pitch
Okay.
anyway.
So purely based on this was entertainment and talent, but output was a question mark always for this player. I've put Jermaine McGlashan.
Yeah.
Because I remember a game away at Gillingham when he completely tore it up. He's so fast, direct, beating everyone, won us a penalty. He was one of my favourite players growing up. Made 60 odd appearances, only 5 goals, so nowhere near what McLean did. But they're similar profile players, and I think that was more excitement for me to pick McGlashan because you just never knew what he was going to do, but he had kind of special ability when he wanted to. So I felt I had to put him in based on the impact he made on me as a fan.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fair. I mean, he was definitely. I think he was in Terry Brown's period, and he definitely was a rising star. Went on Shrewsbury, did he go to, and then onwards. So
yeah, Northampton Town. Was it Cheltenham? Definitely. So I think he made the step up. Never really kind of stayed up too high in the divisions. So I think it was just that impact for me. But if we're going more on longevity and stats, then you probably say Aaron McLean.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, why don't we come back to that position when we've heard the other two?
Okay. So let's go over to the left of midfield.
Yeah.
Who have you got?
So again, playing a 4-3-3. These left and right have to play as sort of semi wingers, or they're able to be like wingers for me, which is why Aaron's in there. So my left midfield is Joel Grant, amazingly mercurial, left-sided player, but never knew what he was going to do. I don't think his fellow players knew what he was going to do. The crowd didn't know what he was going to do. But when he was on song, classic winger, when he was on song, he was unplayable. And again, to get people into the ground, I would go and watch Joel anytime. Went on to Exeter, Torquay. Again, went into League Two. Not sure if he made League One, but was a good player.
Yeah. So he's actually my probably most memorable player of growing up
Mm.
watching the shots in that era. And yeah, McGlashan and him for me. I always love a winger. I love a
Yeah.
pacey winger who's got skills. And it looked like a lot of the time Joel Grant couldn't be bothered. It was almost like lazy ability where he
Yeah.
just had time, a million step overs. He knew he was very good, but he didn't always, have the work ethic to run up and down. But he did some special things. And I just remember every time he got the ball, the whole crowd would be on the edge of their seats.
Yeah.
I was so excited to go watch Joel. So I've also got Joel Grant on my left mid position. So that's a banker then.
Good.
That's 100% going in there.
Good.
That's nice. That one of mine's actually made it. Okay, so we're moving into the centre. This is a central position of your three. I've got a couple, so you
Yeah.
go for yours first.
Okay. I'm 4-3-3. So my central midfield player is Scott Davis, and Scotty Davis is a legend at Aldershot. Came as a very young player. Gary Waddock, I think, took him under his wing, so to speak. But one of the reasons he's the legend is he scored that goal at Torquay to win the game when we were looking to win the conference, and get back into league football. And I think we were into the 89th minute, and he scored a sort of sizzling goal at Torquay, basically to almost guarantee that we were champions. We just needed a point at Exeter, which we got. And he was he'd shoot from ridiculous distances, like 50 yards, and they go over the bar by 50 yards sometimes. But he was such a young, exciting player. So on our protocol, our criteria of exciting, committed, I think he was really committed to shots, committed to Gary Waddock, who was committed back to him. And obviously his life hasn't gone that smoothly. It's sort of well documented in some ways, but boy, he had a talent. So for excitement and commitment, he's in for me.
Okay, good shout. Yeah, I'm not sure why, but my first memory of him, as soon as he said his name, was him getting a red card away at Grays Athletic when
Yeah,
we went together years and years ago. But he
yeah,
had many good moments. So yeah, I
yeah.
remember him, such a good, technically gifted footballer. So we might actually see him make this team. I didn't choose him, but I can see him making this team. So
Okay.
with the formation I've gone for, and in order to try and get the players I really wanted to get in, what I've had to do is I've gone for a bit of a pivot, so more a
Yeah.
defensive-minded midfielder, and then I've got an attacking midfielder who's going to have to come back a little bit, otherwise we're going to concede a lot of goals. So my defensive-minded midfielder, and this is purely based on me remembering just the commitment and the professionalism, not necessarily the most gifted player, but I've put Jake Gallagher in there
Yeah.
as a just always had his shirt tucked in, shorts up high, would get stuck in, almost like an old fashioned breeder midfielder. And I think he was just like a bit of a legend, a bit of a leader, did all the dirty work, wasn't
Yeah.
flashy. Yeah, what do you remember of Jake Gallagher?
Yeah. All those things you said. Incredibly committed to the shots, and scored some important goals. Actually, I remember him scoring at Woking, and some of the really tough away grounds. I remember him scoring. So no, I think he's a good shout. Jake Gallagher is a legend at shots, definitely. If you talk to most fans, they'd say thumbs up. Great guy. Gave everything. If we're looking at commitment, and he wasn't the most exciting player, but then every player on the pitch can't be, can they? They have to
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah,
do the work. I think that's where
exactly.
someone like Theo doesn't always get the credit he deserves, because it's getting the ball, it's giving the ball, it's winning the ball back, it's making tackles. That's not exciting, really. That's just bread and butter, but it needs doing.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted one one workhorse in there, so we don't just give it all to flashy players. So yeah, Jake was 150 plus appearances, was at the shots for 4 years between 2015 and 2019. So he's gone in for me on the defensive side. And then this may be controversial, but I've just wanted to get him
Okay.
in. So as a central midfielder, but attacking mindedly, I've gone for Josh Stokes because I felt like one of the best things to ever come through the shots. He's going straight up to the Championship. So I don't know whether you can call someone a legend after one season, which is all we're going to have him for. But I thought for pure talent and just where his trajectory is going, I can't think of many players who have so quickly been poached by Championship teams. And obviously scored, I think it's almost 20 goals this season, not quite, but he's getting there. So for me, I've gone Josh Stokes with Jake Gallagher, rotating in there. But I know that's a bit of a stretch because Josh is not a central midfielder.
Okay. I don't disagree with that. And for your formation, you need Gallagher in there, don't you, to hold midfield. My midfield's a bit snowflake really, because Aaron McLean and Joel Grant didn't win many tackles between them, and Scott
No.
Davis would be too busy, lashing the ball in from 50 yards.
Yeah.
But then I think
Okay.
Warburton and Barker were pretty tough cookies, so I'm quite confident. Okay, so what do we need to do?
So I think if we're happy with Stokes where he is, I would suggest that you choose between Jake Gallagher and Davis for that other midfield slot. So if we do make it a 4, depending on your front three, but maybe just pick one of those two and we'll come back to them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if I had to choose, I think I'd choose Josh Stokes just because of and this is the current season, this is where we are. But Josh, as you say, has been phenomenal. There's not been another player like Josh in my memory of, coming in from below and going so high. There've been some fantastic players that we've had that have gone on to better and higher things, but not quite so quickly. So if it was between Scott and Josh, I think, I'd have to go for Josh.
Okay. So for my formation, just keeping it in mind, if it was between Gallagher and Scott Davis, who would you go for to sit behind Stokes?
Yeah, I think Gallagher's a legend. Yeah, I think we'd have to put him in. Otherwise, the fans would revolt and they'll string you up.
Yeah. Well, we just need someone with half a defensive mind in there because you're right, with Stokes, Grant, and McLean, the other team's going to be waltzing through the midfield with no one tracking them. So I think
this is why the criteria, the best players won't necessarily work, because it depends what formation you have. If you choose the best player in each position, it won't necessarily be a functioning team. That's why it's remarkable that teams sometimes do so well, because they're not always the best players in each position, but the composite, like the promotion team of 72, they didn't have 11 brilliant players, but there were 11 committed players, and there were 3 outstanding players and a solid goalkeeper. It's that sort of mix, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can tinker with what we've got.
Right.
But so we've technically got our midfield, whether we go for a 3 or a 4. Maybe we'll know after we've gone through our striker forwards list. So you're playing 3 up top. I don't know if you've got 2 wide and a main striker or what you're doing. So do you want to tell us what you're thinking for your front 3?
Yeah. So my front 3 would have a 10. So like shots play at the moment, a front 2 you play off each other, and then a 10 dropped in behind. Which is a little bit advanced for 2000. That wasn't really happening too much, I don't think, but that's what I went for. And so my 10 was Josh Stokes, which we already have. Josh is already in, but I would be in my team. I'd be playing him at 10. And then I think choosing these strikers have been incredibly hard. So if I may, so I'll tell you which 2 they are straight away. But if I may, I've I've thought about Scott Rendell, who joined us in 2003. Actually, a lot of people will know, but Scott began through the youth team in Aldershot. So I remember seeing Scott as a sort of, I think, 18-year-old. He didn't make a first team appearance for Shots on his first go. He was then released, or he got an offer from Woking and went to Woking. But Scott Rendell's an absolute legend, but he didn't quite make it. Roscoe Desane, 2003,
Yeah.
again, bit of a legend, great player, a sort of fox in the box type player, but really skillful as well. Tim Sills, 2004, wonderful player, very good in the air, and played very well as a pair, as a partnership. And Brett Williams, a lot of people would have Brett Williams in their team. 2013, scored goals for fun, scored 40 goals in either 2013 or 14, I think it was. And then, of course, one that you've almost certainly got in your team is Danny Hilton, who is just as mad as a fox. Danny Hilton, got sent off about 7 times in his career because he argued with the ref. But boy, did he improve. Came through the Shots youth setup and then obviously went on to better things. Luton Town, played, I think, in the Championship, or at least League One anyways for him. But my two up front with Josh Stokes behind is Marvin Morgan and Gary Abbott.
I knew you'd go. I knew you'd go Marvin. I knew you'd go Big Marv. So do you want to tell us about Abbott and why he's in?
Yeah, so fans will remember Gary Abbott. Came to the club in 1998, but did stay until 2001. So he just creeps in, Liam. You were little then, but George Borg bought Gary Abbott for £8,000 when he was manager, and I think a lot of people thought he was mad because I think Gary Abbott was already 33. So but he was a proven goal scorer, and he scored 120 goals in 156 appearances.
Wow.
Just a machine, just an absolute machine. I think it was 10 hat tricks for the Shots in his career. 10 hat tricks. He was just brilliant, and of course the level was below league, so he was better than the league he was playing at. But you still have to do it. You still have to put them away, don't you? And he was so significant in us moving through the leagues. So Gary Abbott, massive goal machine and unforgettable, and a big help in us getting up back to the league. And Marvin Morgan, bless him, obviously no longer with us, sadly died a couple of years ago or so. But just again, for excitement and character, one of Gary Waddock's signings came from Woking, but nobody held it against him. So yeah, really good guy, full of character. So those are my front two. I did think of Lauren Tolaj, but I think Lauren needs to be a legend. Lauren needs to do it next year as well.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, Lauren was in my discussion, but I just think, yeah. Whereas with Josh, I think you can just see that trajectory straight away. I feel like there's a lot of goal scorers that have done what Lauren's done, but as you say, we need to see that consistently. So I think it was a bit of a harder to throw him in there. But yeah, he was in my conversation. Marvin Morgan's on my bench, FYI. Big
Okay.
Marvin. I think it was 93 appearances, 25 goals. He was there from 2008 to 11. I remember that goal he scored away at Oxford that you and I went to.
Yeah.
So I think that's, as a fan, I remember those players by those key moments and great
Yeah.
goals, a piece of skill, great save with Nicky Ball. So I think that's what always comes back to me. So I've gone for obviously 2 up front. So I think I didn't realise that Gary Abbott scored so many goals. So I think he needs to go in as a just nailed on because he scored so many goals. Like the volume of goals is ridiculous. So I've gone for Danny Hilton.
Yeah.
Who was amazingly laughable to watch, frustrating to watch, brilliant to watch, depending on what day you caught him on. Um, but just the way he would never stop running after a lost cause. He'd close down. His fitness was great. I mean, he just continued to
Mm.
press, lead the line well. Um, Most of the time, couldn't hit a barn door when you needed him to, but actually, I did score him, saw some great goals, and obviously he's a long term servant of the club. So I've got him around here about 180 appearances, only 35 goals. So when you think about it, compared to the likes of Talage and Stokes and Barham this year, he was never
Mm.
prolific, and I think that's what people always say about Danny Hilton. But there was a reason that he went to Luton and he went up and so on. So I think it was all the industrious stuff that people didn't see as much that I really valued him for. And I
Yeah,
think if you've got a pure goal scorer like Abbott next to him, then I think a Danny Hilton for me is just a bit of a hero, and he does all the pressing, very unselfish. Obviously, loved Aldershot very much. So for
mm.
me, Danny Hilton is definitely in there for my team, and alongside him, Tim Sills. So obviously, you mentioned Sills in your explanation. I just thought, he's almost got 1 in 2 in terms of a goal ratio from
Yeah,
2003 to 2006. So for me, yeah, that's a really good record. Great goal scorer. Again, really popular around the club. And so those two in tandem for me, I thought they'll work really nicely. One's clinical and one works really hard.
yeah.
And so that's a match made in heaven. So I couldn't quite fit more. I couldn't quite fit Marvin into that
No,
because I wanted those two. But yeah, to throw that in with Gary, I think it's an interesting lineup, don't you?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's really difficult. I mean, Marvin wasn't prolific, but I think the impact that he made was what we all, why are we talking about him now? There have been loads of strikers for shots, haven't there? We haven't talked about Roy Young. I mean, Roy Young scored goals for fun. We haven't even mentioned him really. Um, so yeah, I think that's true. Um, so what are we going to do? Because I've got a front three with a 10. You've got a front two. What do you think?
So I think both of us need to put. We've both got. I think we'll both put Gary Abbott as locked in. So if you've got Stokes and Abbott, I think we need to decide between Marvin Morgan and Danny Hilton
Yeah,
for that other striking
others place.
spot.
Okay. Well, I think my head says that Marvin just had something about him that was just great fun. Whenever he was playing, I always enjoyed watching the shots. But my heart says that Hilton actually is a shot through and through. Yeah, because he came up through the youth ranks, I think, and yeah, mad as a hatter, but he always gave 100%, didn't he?
Yeah, he sure did. Um, yeah, just one of my favorite players, and I think that's what does it for me. He wasn't clinical. He didn't score a bag of goals. Yet even now, years and years later, he's still one of my first memories of going to the
Yeah,
shots. So I think he
yeah,
obviously had an impact on a lot of shots fans for
yeah,
a whole
yeah.
host of reasons.
He was a heart on the sleeve sort of person. You could see what Danny was thinking all the time. He was fed up with the ref. He was fed up with his teammates or himself or whatever. I mean, he got more red cards than anybody else in living memory as a striker, I think. Defenders get them obviously for taking out last man and stuff. But yeah, mercurial is the word.
Yeah, a few of those we've said about that. Okay, so I've written these down, Dad. I don't know if you have. Um,
Okay.
but if we go for your formation of a
Yeah.
4-3-3, which I still think your midfield is a bit dodgy, but we can have a look at that now as we go through. So correct me if I'm wrong, but we've got Nicky Ball in goal. We've got Alexander right back, Barker and Warburton our centre back pairing with Ollie Harfield left back.
Yeah.
Okay. Then midfield, this is where I think it gets a bit controversial. We've got McLean on the right. We've then got Jake Gallagher somehow doing everything in the middle. And then we've got Joel Grant on the left.
Yeah.
We've then got Josh Stokes in a number 10. He's going to have to track back for sure. And then we've got Gary Abbott and Danny Hilton as a 2. That's our strike force. Are you happy with that final 11?
Yeah, I'm happy with that as long as you are. There's a couple of people to mention. I know we're going to talk about the bench as well, but we haven't spoken about Darren Barnard. But he came into my conversation, my thinking. Classy left back, ex Chelsea, ex international. He came and added a real bit of quality. When you saw Darren play, also very good dead ball specialist, wasn't he? But was he a shot through and through? I'm not saying he never tried for us at all, but just that difference between somebody who comes down and on their way back to retirement and just stops in a couple of years, or somebody who's like a Danny Hilton. I just think classy player. I mean, one of the best players we've ever had, technically. But I did think of him, and also Dave Winfield, who played at centre back. Really, really strong player, wholly committed to Aldershot Town, but not quite making it for me. Maybe it's because he scored for Ebbsfleet against us in the playoff in 2018 or something. I've never forgiven him.
Holding a grudge, Dad. That's what it's called. Yeah. There were quite a few on the periphery for me as well. So I did actually think about. Well, I didn't think about, but I thought it was worth mentioning. We actually had Nick Pope, Newcastle's Nick Pope, on loan for a handful of games in 2013, which is a bit mental when you think about it, that he's now playing for England. So I had Ben Hurd on the bench at right back. We've spoken about Ben. Centre back, I had Darren Jones. Darren, I remember, was such a leader and was just tough. And was obviously kind of captain material. So for me, he was such a good leader to have at the back, but I just thought I had others who just nipped him in that queue. I had Marvin Morgan on the bench, I had Tolaj on the bench. I thought about, obviously, Scott Davis in midfield. Bernard Mensah probably wasn't around long enough to really cement anything, but I enjoyed kind of him playing in a forward position. So there were quite a few names knocking about, but I'm pretty happy with where we've come to.
My bench was we've mentioned some of them, but Nick Pope would, just for the fact he's an England player and gives us a feather in our cap. Callum Reynolds was on the bench for me. He's just a classy player, reads the game so well, and is still playing really well for Bromley this year, and gave a lot for the shots, I think. I had Bernard Mensah, I had Lauren Tolej as strikers, or midfield / strikers. And the other person to mention is Rhys Day, who 2006 joined us, did a really, really good job for us as centre back, very committed. So somebody again who shored things up while we were trying to be an attacking team under Terry Brown. So I had Straker, and I had Anthony Charles on my bench.
Good old Anthony Charles. I'm glad he gets a mention right at the end of the podcast.
Yeah, he had a nice afro as well, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, I did enjoy Anthony Charles. I thought about Sonny Bradley, in terms of quality centre back, who then obviously went on to play for Plymouth and things like that. But I think you're right. Yeah, there's so many players in the conversation, but I like our final 11. So yeah, as we've mentioned, we're going to put this out on social media. Let us know your feedback. What would your team be? What changes would you make? Of course, there will be changes because you will think differently to us. But yeah, Dad, you happy with that? You're going to stick with your selections?
Yeah, I'm very happy. I don't think we're a million miles apart, and I'm not surprised by some of yours because as a sort of 8-year-old, 9-year-old, it's the, as you know, I took my grandson to a game the other day, and he's just 8, and it's the dynamic, exciting players, isn't it, that they see and sort of remember.
Yeah, they're always the ones that inspire you and get you to come back, which is what it's all about,
Yeah.
inspiring the next generation of footballers. So hopefully, I think we've got a good breadth there, Dad. Actually, I did think you're probably going to go 2000s early, and I'll probably go later because of our ages. But I think
Mm.
actually we've agreed on quite a bit, and we've got a good mix there of some, a couple of current players who are playing this season,
Yeah.
but then also honouring those that have come and gone years ago as well. I think we've got a good balance there.
Yeah. 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 And I think that's worth saying, actually, just as we finished, that Aldershot Town and Aldershot FC have had some just fantastic players over the time, and you can't put them all together into a, El Galactico team because they all came in different eras. But I think for us as fans to realise that not everybody is a technically brilliant player, but they are wholehearted or they give everything, is good enough if the team mixture is right. Frosty could be very close to that team. We talked about him earlier. In another year's time or 2 years' time, if he stays at the club and gets 300 appearances or 200 appearances. But it takes time. You only win the fans over when you're consistent and you're committed. And there's something about I want to go and see him play.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to check back and do one again next season perhaps to then allow those players who are currently doing really well to show us a whole another season.
Yeah, good. Just
We'll
before we go, just to remind you our predictions, I think somebody predicted that it would be Aldershot Town 1, Solihull Moors 1.
I'm guessing the fact that you've brought that up, it was you, Dad.
Yeah, it was. So I was not quite right about Ebbsfleet, but I think I was right about that one. So yeah, I'm just marginally in front in terms of our predictions. And if the Shots fans can turn out, for Maidenhead in numbers, York Road is always a difficult place to go. It's always really, really tough to win there. So I think if the Shots fans could watch this and turn up, and then Dorking on Bank Holiday Monday, it's good fun.
Yeah, yeah. Here's to a good Easter then, on the pitch and off it. And thanks, Dad, for submitting
Indeed.
your 11. And we'll be back next week. Got some
Thank you.
more player interviews coming up. So, thanks for watching and listening, everyone. And we'll see you on the next pod.